there is so much we can do that is little to no cost, that we just need to start integrating in bite-sized pieces throughout our lives. It will get easy. It'll just become kind of the backdrop of your day-to-day life, and it will support you in a lot of different ways.
Hey, everybody. Thanks very much for hanging out with us again today. TLC presents Todd-versations. I got to tell you, this show is one of the ones I've been looking forward to for a long time, got in the books. And I am so thrilled with the guests we have today. We're going to get into a topic that I think is super important. So give it up and welcome from Functional Fertility, Dr. Kalea Wattles, and from the Wellness Dish, Kirsten Ramsdell. Ladies, welcome to Todd-versations.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having us.
It is absolutely my pleasure to be here. And I love the fact that it's Kirsten and Kalea, it's K squared. I'm thinking if this thing works out and we do this right, you guys can be the next pop band. I'm just telling you right now. I'm just telling you that's the plan. I'll be the manager. We'll make this happen.
Love it.
I'm ready.
But I am so good. I am so excited for you guys to be here. And I want to introduce you a little bit more formally and then let you guys kind of introduce yourselves as well. But Dr. Wattles is here. She's the founder of Functional Fertility. She's a naturopath physician specializing in fertility and functional medicine. And your focus is on women's health, using functional medicine to improve the endocrine system, reproductive health, and therapeutic, hard for me to say, nutrition. Kirsten, founder of the Wellness Dish, which I'm a huge fan of, got a master's degree in nutrition and functional medicine. And your focus is embracing lifestyle changes, discovering the healing effects of food, and enjoying the process of restoring health. And I've asked you guys to be here today because I believe that we have not a crisis in this country, but we have a situation in this country that I think that we could start to help ourselves fix, and that's our health. Whether it's eating the right foods, breathing better air, knowing where your water supply comes from, or taking vitamins and understanding the effects that those have to help our body out. And we're going to get into a wide range of topics, including talking a little bit about COVID and what's involved there. So I'm looking forward to that. And so really, just before I get started, Kirsten, I'll start with you. Please say hello, introduce yourself, because I've already been talking for like 3 minutes, which is completely inappropriate. So please, you lead us off and say hello.
Hi, no, thank you so much for having me, Todd. I'm just really excited to have this opportunity to talk about what I'm most passionate about, modifiable lifestyle factors, and this foundational pillar of health that I think has been ignored for far too long. And it's definitely time to talk about it.
I agree wholeheartedly. And Kalea, welcome to you as well.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's always a joy when we can talk about functional medicine, and I'm sure that we'll talk about this a little bit more, but one of the things that we're interested most is really increasing access and really just increasing awareness that functional medicine exists. So any opportunity that we have to share with an audience who might be new to functional medicine, absolute pleasure.
Well, I've been living in a functional medicine world for a very long time in my house. And it's a very big part of a healing process within my family to overcome cancer and to make things better in their own lives. And I've seen the direct result of that daily regimen. And it's a part of my life, which I'll share a little bit later about how I feel about it. But it's such an important conversation that we don't have enough of, and I think a lot of times that we run, I think we live in a world where we just want a pill to solve everything, right? Kirsten and I have talked about this before. You want a pill to lose weight. You want a pill to have hair. You want to have a pill to have more babies. You want to have a pill to sleep better. That always doesn't work, right? And it's just a quick fix to a problem that's actually probably much deeper than a pill can solve. And that's why I want to kind of felt this topic and this whole conversation about our health and making things different, is so important. I say all the time that food is a drug. It can help you and it can hurt you all at the same time, right? There's a big difference between an apple and a candy bar. And it's really important, I think, we start to step back and recognize that. So to have people like yourselves, young guns coming up in this industry, carving a path, making waves, writing published papers, doing some cool stuff. I'm pumped that you guys are here, and I'm excited for our audience on a global scale to listen to your message and what we have to talk about today. So I'm going to shut the hell up, start asking these 5,913 questions I have, and see how fast we can get through all this, because I know you guys have a lot to share. So let's start off really quick. Kalea, I'll start off with you. Give us a little frame up of what functional medicine is.
Absolutely. This is a great question. So
by the way, none of my questions suck. So let's get that out of the way right away. All my questions
we'll just get that right on the table. Yeah.
Right on the table.
Questions. Well, we'll kick it off with this one then. And I love talking about functional medicine. And really, this is an individualized, patient-centered, science-based practice. But one thing I like to highlight is that functional medicine really honors what I call the humanness of medicine, right? We know that the way that we effectively heal and make behavior changes within community. So one of the really important pieces that we talk about is that the functional medicine model really empowers patients and practitioners to work together in something that I call the therapeutic alliance to really address those underlying causes of disease. You know, you talked about nutrition. That's something that we think about. It's really multifactorial. And this is tough from a practitioner standpoint because it really requires this detailed look into our patients, their genes, their biochemistry, their lifestyle factors. The way that I frame this to my patients in the clinic is the functional medicine model is somewhat of a conceptual framework. So it allows me to make a map of my patients' entire body systems and how they're working together, their lifestyle factors, and then the timeline of their entire life so I can understand how that set them up on their current health trajectory. So really, it's this conceptual framework. It allows me to map out the complexities of humans, and humans are so complex, right? There's so many moving parts that this is how I capture all of that. Right. And that allows me to get oriented to my patient's unique health history and their symptoms and how their body systems are working together so that I can leverage the points that are strong to really support the body systems that need a little bit more tender, loving care. Right. And that's allowing the patient's own body to work for them. I'm not this outside person that's doing the work for them. I'm empowering their own body to do the work by, like I said, leveraging those strong points. So just to kind of wrap this up put a bow on it, functional medicine is not a test or a protocol or where you went to school. It's really a way of thinking. It's really that body systems approach that honors the uniqueness and the complexities of humans.
Well, and honestly, and I love, thank you for that. That's beautiful. And Kirsten, I'm gonna throw the same question to you too, but it's really about common sense, isn't it? I mean, isn't that really kind of the backbone of just like breaking this down? To my point earlier, it's like, if you eat a candy bar, you eat an apple, common sense says, right? I mean, it's when I think about food, first thing that just popped in my mind is I was in a conversation about pesticide use, right, out on the farms. And there's pesticides out there where the FDA says it's probably toxic. It's either is or it isn't, right? I mean, it's like that old adage, you can't drink a Diet Coke and eat a bag of French fries and think you got 0 calories coming, right? They don't watch each other out. So I appreciate that response that you said and the way that you framed it up. Kirsten, same over to you. Tell me a little bit about your opinion in looking at functional medicine.
Yeah, no, I mean, what Kalea just spoke about was just spot on. I think that another kind of leverage point in functional medicine that is ever present more than ever is the fact that we are looking at chronic dysfunction and widespread imbalances in the body. In chronic illness, and that's a pretty common disease these days. I mean, there are a number of systemic imbalances in the body. And if we don't start to look deeper and look upstream and try to discover these common root imbalances in the body, we're just going to keep putting a pill for every ill, a pill on pills to address pill-like symptoms. And it's just going to be this ever spiraling cycle of not really working towards health, but just kind of masking illness. I do. Yeah. I would also just point out that there are kind of these, like Kalea was saying, functional medicine is a way of thinking, it's a philosophy. There are also these 6 principles of functional medicine. Kalea, you touched on several of them being patient-centered. One that I really like to promote is this idea of positive vitality, that we're not really looking to just heal ourselves from illness, but really optimize our health. And a lot of people, I know myself, found their way into functional medicine once I started to realize that I didn't have to feel the way that I was feeling, that I could feel a lot better than just fine. And so, yeah, health as positive vitality is really, really a center of functional medicine as well.
Well, you can't watch an advertisement on television about some kind of a pill without the disclaimer at the end of all the things that pill's going to do. Here's all the warning signs. your arm's going to fall off. You're going to grow a third eye. You're going to have diarrhea for the rest of your life. I mean, all these things, all these messages like, well, that sounds great. You cured one problem. Here's 19 others you got to worry about, right? So your point, to me, you guys have summed up one of the reasons why I want to do this, because why take something that causes something, all these other problems? It makes no sense to me. So I want to go back and because I think functional food and functional medicine are two kind of separate things, but they are connected together. So Kirsten, I'm going to throw this at you. Can you give us a little definition of what functional food is?
This episode of Todd-versations is brought to you by Superior Fresh, changing how food is grown to change the world. Proud recipient of the American Heart Association's Heart Check seal for their USA-grown Atlantic salmon, raised on an organic, non-GMO diet in an ecosystem that supports the growing of the sweetest USDA-certified organic lettuces, salads, and vegetables. Visit and shop online at superiorfresh.com.
Yeah, it's really interesting because in my studies, in my master's program, we had used the term functional food. There's a lot of ways in which it's used in the masses. We see it in the grocery stores, right? There are sections of functional foods and superfoods, and it's used in a whole variety of different ways. Really, at the crux of it all is that a functional food has some added sort of health benefit. So it's not just energy, it's not just carbs, fats, and proteins to maintain our energy levels throughout the day. It's not just calories. There's something else there that adds a beneficial quality. Either it's antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, something along those lines. What I do find is really interesting, and if we look at a variety of different definitions of functional food, even the American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics really notes it as anything that is fortified, enriched, or enhanced. And so in a lot of ways that brings some question to my mind that some of the functional foods that we see in our marketplace are not necessarily by nature even whole foods. There's this just misunderstanding, I think, about what functional means.
Right.
And I think part of that comes from, in reflecting on this and realizing, like, where did this concept come from? A lot of it comes from, in my mind, this disconnect from our food supply, this kind of dysfunctional
Absolutely.
food environment. And now we're having to say, hey, these are actually some functional foods, but in all reality, food as medicine has always been functional when it's in its
Right.
whole form. And, when you're not eating these highly processed ingredients and additives. So
100% agree.
long-winded answer to say.
No,
Yeah.
not long-winded at all, because we have been baffled by our food. We have been marketed to, right? We have been marketed to make money when it comes to our food supply. And that's dangerous because food is, again, it's a drug. It can help you and it can hurt you. And so you're absolutely right. When you go into the grocery store and see, a 79-cent box of mac and cheese products, sorry, mac and cheese guys, there's a reason it's 79 cents, because quite frankly, if you pull back the label, it's probably not a lot of it in there that's actually real food. And that's dangerous, right? And that's why I love this conversation. It's why I love this lane that we're in right now. Kalea, I'm going to throw the same question over to you, please. Just kind of your definition a little bit about functional food and how it feels to your heart.
Yeah, sure thing. Well, I couldn't agree more with what Kirsten said. I've always thought about functional foods as there's something that has some positive effect beyond just basic nutrition, right? Beyond just our basic macronutrients. There's something special about this food. And when I talk to my patients about functional foods, part of their treatment plan, we're going to include functional foods. It's always something that I frame as this is what this food's superpower is, right? And
Right.
Why I think this is helpful is we can think about functional foods, for example, we might say cold water fish. That could even be a functional food because of the omega-3 content and how that can support your cardiovascular health, your blood viscosity, your cellular membranes. And the beauty of it is it doesn't have to be something super fancy and expensive. I think for a while we got on the superfood thing and it was like, the goji berries and acai and these things that were really expensive. But really, when we look at what a patient's unique body needs, maybe they need plant-based antioxidants. And in my mind, that means a sweet potato is going to be a functional food for you at that point.
Sure.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so I think functional foods, going back to the genetic and biochemical individuality that we talked about, that's one of the tenets of functional medicine. In my mind, functional foods are applied the same way. They're different depending on what your unique needs are for that food or food group.
Right. Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And thank you. Very eloquent, both of you, for framing that up. And I think it's important that people recognize that, because you're right. Again, we're being marketed to, right? As opposed to already, we want somebody to solve that immediate problem, right? So to your point, like, here's the newest thing, it's $900 an ounce, but it's the newest thing, as opposed to the thousands of years of having a sweet potato in our world, that's just as good, but we don't talk about that because it's not new and shiny. And it's dangerous for that, right? I mean, granted, I'm not taking anything away from those new discoveries and what they are, because they're valuable, but at the same token, we just try to, we always hit the easy button at times when it comes to our food. And it's just so dangerous, in my opinion. One of the big things about functional food and functional medicine is that there's supplements involved, right? Vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin D, all these different things. So how do you and how do consumers actually do the due diligence when it comes to looking at supplements? Because you can go to the grocery store and it's like, well, that's the cheapest one, I'm going to buy it, right? Or that's the most expensive one, I'm going to buy it. Just kind of, in some ways, when you go down the vitamin aisle, it's like a wine aisle. It's like, well, I don't know anything about red wine, but if this one's $50 and this one's 10, this one for 50 has got to be better. That's not necessarily true. So how do you guys do the due diligence with that?
Yeah, I'm happy to chime
Either one, fire it up. You go. Either one. I'm sorry, I didn't pick one. Just start talking. I don't give a rip.
One of my biggest obstacles with supplements and choosing supplements and doing our due diligence is it's pointless to take our supplements if we're not reaching a therapeutic dose. So that's the first thing I'm going to say, of when we just go to the grocery store and we're trying to, pick out a supplement that's on the shelf. It's hard if you don't have guidance from your healthcare practitioner, because oftentimes what we see on the shelf is so far below a therapeutic dose that we see as effective in a research setting. And so, number one, I'm always looking, does this supplement actually meet therapeutic dose requirements? And then, of course, quality, I think, is a huge issue when it comes to supplements. And so I always encourage my patients to buy their supplements through reputable vendors. And so I'm usually providing, sources like Emerson and Fullscript, and buying direct from supplement companies. We know that when we buy supplements online from large online retailers, that supplement quality can really be compromised. And when we look at the ingredients that are actually in the supplements, it's often not exactly what's on the label. So we have to be really cautious there.
Sure.
Other things I look, is this supplement produced in a facility that uses good manufacturing practices? And you can look up that information. It's widely available. And then, is there any third-party testing looking for things like heavy metal contamination, mycotoxins? What else is in the supplement that we don't actually know about? And then I always, this is my maybe off the record, on the record, but I don't, I know we got it. It's on my treatment plans, but what I'm trying to say is I want to see, is this company that's making this supplement, are they making really fancy claims, that this supplement will do this thing? Because I always want to approach that with a healthy level of skepticism, that, that supplement bottle doesn't know you. They don't know your health history and your family history and what you've been through. And so I want to be really, really skeptical about anything that's making a claim that it's going to do something big for your health, because at the end of the day, this is an ancillary thing. It's a supplement, right? It's not your lifestyle factors. It's not your nutrition. It's not these big game-changing things in terms of your health and vitality.
Right. Kirsten, how about you? Same thought on the due diligence.
Well, yeah, to Kalea's point, I was going to bring up a lot of those points as well in discussing supplements. I think first and foremost, to your point, Kalea, on professional grade supplements, I definitely recommend that. And I also really love Fullscript, Emerson. We want to keep this stuff simple. And I think sometimes it's nice when you can just say, go here. These are all vetted. These are great supplements. And here's your dose. This is what you can even prescribe off of those platforms, particular doses and particular supplements for patients. Now, in terms of, walking into the grocery store and feeling like you are able to make the best decision for yourself, the first thing that I'm looking at in supplements is making sure that, to your point, that maybe it has that GMP label on it. It's been vetted for good manufacturing practices. I don't want to see any additional, additives, flavorings, colorings, things that I'm not, again, to kind of that clean label look that people are looking for. They're wanting simpler ingredients. If you're walking in and you want your 30 milligrams of zinc, that's what it should include, that and nothing else. I do think, though, when we are thinking about people just walking into the grocery store and choosing their supplements, a lot of those people are finding their information from blogs and just online sources. They're not seeing or going to their practitioners, whether they're conventional medicine or functional medicine practitioners, and asking questions about that therapeutic dose. They don't really know necessarily why they are needing to take these supplements. There's that education piece lacking. And I think that there's also this risk of people consuming too much, reaching or surpassing that tolerable upper limit, especially when we see people who are getting their vitamins and minerals in these functional protein powders and these functional green powders that they're putting into their water in the morning or their smoothies. And they're also taking a multivitamin on top of that. I do worry that there's this misunderstanding that more is better. And
right, but that's not the case, right?
With everything in life, it's not the case. So we can do our best to teach patients about, the reason why we are looking for particular supplements to, again, supplement their diet, what they should be looking for in terms of the ingredients. But I do think it also comes back to make sure that you're talking with your patients about their supplements and that they know what they should be looking for. A lot of people think that it's not really worthy of conversation, that if they're on a vitamin D or a probiotic or a zinc supplement, it's not worthy of telling their practitioner. But in all reality, we know that there are therapeutic doses and they're valuable for our health, and relaying those messages to your practitioner are also important. It's not just about what drug you're on. Let's talk about supplements.
Well, and look, your body can only absorb so much. So if your body can only absorb 10 and you're putting in 1,000, you're just throwing money away, right? Because it's just getting flushed out. You're not getting any real benefit of that, correct? I mean, right.
Yeah,
and so, I was
going to bring this back to the functional medicine approach, because I think that this is a connecting point here. Is the supplement conversation is nuanced. It's not just about selecting the dose and the right brand. It's also how is that going to interact inside that patient's body, inside the context of their unique ecosystem. And that's where I think it's really beneficial when you have someone who's saying, oh, so you're taking, B vitamins, for example. Well, we know that the absorption of B vitamins is largely dependent on what's going on with the acidity inside your digestive tract. And do you have the right enzymes? And do you have the right shuttles to bring those B vitamins from your intestines and shuttle them into your bloodstream? And so it's not just about the milligrams that you're taking of your supplements, right? It's also what's the host interaction once those supplements get inside. And that's where anchoring back into this concept of biochemical individuality is so important.
Absolutely. Well said. Thank you for bringing that full circle, because I think that's needed to be said. And it's also very important that people recognize that. Is that it's a process. It's just not one pill is not going to solve your problem. There's a process. And that's why I think that functional medicine and functional food are such an important conversation to be elevated, because it can make a huge difference in everybody's lives. And we don't talk enough about it, right? Our own government, our own system doesn't even talk enough about it. And that's my next question. So this is great tee up. Let's talk a little bit about the disconnect between kind of mainstream medicine and functional medicine, because and I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV. But nonetheless, when they go to medical school, and I've got friends and associates have gone to medical, they don't spend a whole lot of time on nutrition. They don't spend a whole lot of time on vitamins, right? And granted, it's a big job. It's a lot of heavy lifting to become a doctor, as you know. I get it. But at the end of the day, it's like that's not the biggest focal point of what they're doing, which is really unfortunate. So talk to me a little bit about the disconnect between both of those. And Kirsten, go ahead and fire it off first if you'd like.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think one of the major disconnects, and partially it's philosophy, but partially it comes down to our system and the time allotted that practitioners have with their patients. I think first and foremost, that's one of the biggest barriers to the functional medicine model, is that time. As Kalea was mentioning right at the first question, it's really getting to know each individual patient, their goals, their body, all the root imbalances at play. It's taking the time for that. And the mainstream medicine conventional model just doesn't have that kind of time, unfortunately, or they don't value it maybe in the same way.
Sure.
One of the other kind of areas of disconnect between the conventional model and functional medicine is that functional medicine we stay curious. We're always wondering why, and we're always like trying to listen into that patient's goals and get them to where they want to be, not just where their diagnosis may progress to, right? We're not just trying to put a Band-Aid on something that we're seeing visibly, but we're trying to listen into that individual, understand and value their story, and put it into the context of their treatment plan. With that said, diagnosis intervention is a little bit different with functional medicine in that we're comfortable in the gray. When we have a very low normal and really high normal lab, or, we're seeing a little bit of something that may or may not progress to illness, but, in the conventional model, they're normal and that's okay. Let's wait for the disease to manifest. In functional medicine, that gray is intriguing. That's where we get curious, and we don't then deny their symptoms. We say, yeah, it's normal, but I can see where your body is pushing hard. Why your symptoms, why you're fatigued, why you're frustrated, you have your muscle pain. We shouldn't ignore it. Just because it's normal, we shouldn't ignore it. And so those are kind of two big disconnects I see between the two models.
100%. Kalea, over to you for the same question, that disconnect.
I mean, she nailed it. That's exactly how I see it too, that it's really a philosophical difference. And I love how Kirsten talked about, you said we're more comfortable in the gray area. I absolutely loved that. So we have a mentor who said something that really struck me, and that was the practice of medicine. I guess if you think about the conventional model, especially, it's really about making perfect decisions with imperfect information, right? We never have the whole story. And then there's all of this pressure to make the perfect diagnosis. And the reason why I think there's so much pressure to make that diagnosis is because in the conventional setting, that's the end of the story. You make the diagnosis and then that's it. You treat it. But we always say in functional medicine that we treat people, right? We don't treat diagnosis codes. And so that gives us this whole opportunity to say, well, the diagnosis is actually not the end of our inquiry. We're staying curious, as Kirsten said. And now we can use that diagnosis to inform everything that we want to look at. So if I know that, someone has a condition that's generally inflammatory, well, then that gives me all of these ideas to think about, well, what are the main drivers of inflammation? It's not enough for me just to say this is an inflammatory condition. Well, what has preceded and set us up for this, what's going on in our inflammasome, I'll say, because I love that word, about all of these contributors to our inflammatory load. And so I think when we take this philosophy of staying curious and then looking at all of these bigger factors, so I'll just kind of throw out some of the systems. We always say functional medicine is systems-based medicine, right? And that means body systems, but it also means the context of the human that's existing inside all of these intersystems. We think about their sociogenomics, what's going on with their social networks. We know people change, right, within their social networks. So what does that even look like for you? And I said inflammasome, what's contributing to your inflammatory body burden, your exposome, right? What are all of these exposures to our environment and to other people and to our relationships that are going on? So it's just, I hate to be redundant, but really honoring those human complexities, that's the difference maker.
For sure. Well, and I got to tell you, a perfect decision with imperfect info. Boy, does that not sound like what we're dealing with right now in everyday news cycle? Right. I mean, I'm gonna get back to that quote, probably gonna go on a t-shirt. I'm just telling you right now. And I've
thought about it every day since I've heard it. So you and me both.
Oh my God, it's such a powerful statement. But so functional medicine is I guess how has functional medicine, is a better way of phrasing it, has changed the way we're looking at health now. I mean, because you guys are busy. You guys are the real deal. I mean, functional fertility, the wellness dish, you guys are rocking it because people are like, who do I go to? Who do I trust? Why? There's got to be a better way. How can I empower myself? Right. Again, it's not that easy button, but you guys are in a business, and I'm not being despairing in any way to the medical community, but they're in a business to fix something and move on. You're in the business of creating a program to fix something your entire lifetime, an entire change for the rest of your life that's going to uplift you. And it's such a different model. So how has functional medicine kind of helped to change the way we look at health today? Kalea?
Yeah.
You're on the spot. Go.
I would say it's always been part of our philosophy, and I'll say both for functional medicine, and then, I'm a naturopathic doctor, so I always really have to anchor into naturopathic philosophy. It's always been part of our philosophy to cultivate resiliency. And that's what this whole thing is about, our resiliency to, meet whatever we encounter out here in the wild and remain healthy into the other side. And so
Right.
What's been interesting about, in these interesting and unique times is it makes things more visible, right? It shines a light onto things that were maybe sneaking under the surface, and now we can see it. And I think what having a global pandemic has shined a light on in our community is the fact that building that resiliency is something that we can't ignore. And it's something that you have to do. You have to do the work before you meet that threat in the wild, right? And so
Right on.
now we're doing all of this work to help folks cultivate that resiliency. But it's interesting that now there's all of these added stressors. And so, we started creating that health and really working on what some people call our health house 2-3 years ago. If we had done that diligence then, I wonder what that would look like in terms of our resiliency against viral infections at this point. But now, if we hadn't done the work, now we're kind of doing some backlogging of trying to fill our reserves and make sure that we're nutritionally replete and work on our exposome and our inflammasome. But now there's all of this added stress and trauma of living in a global pandemic. And so it's an interesting scenario. But what is helpful about the functional medicine model, again, is that we're identifying those areas that are really strong, like I talked about, so that we can leverage those to take care of the areas that need some more support. And it's simple, right? Kirsten and I spoke earlier this year at a big conference talking about our modifiable lifestyle factors and how that stuff is largely free or little cost and makes a gigantic difference in our health outcomes. So even thinking about sleep, nutrition, community, stress management, all of that stuff that actually it doesn't cost a lot of money, but that's those factors that are going to make a big difference in your resiliency and your ability to come out healthy on the other side of a big stressor.
Sure. I love it. Kirsten, over to you for the same question.
No, that was beautiful. I would just add on that, to your question, how has functional medicine helped change the way that we view health? I know that a lot of people are feeling this way now in response to this global pandemic and finally, learning a bit more about how to maintain that resiliency and why that immune resiliency is important.
Sure.
I came to it very naive as well throughout early of my health journey. And I think people are starting to realize that health isn't a moment. It's not like it's a yearly checkup with your PCP. It's a journey, and it is like I think there's a quote, treat your body well. It's the only house you have to live in. I don't want to quote that. I'm not sure who said that, but I love that philosophy that, health really is a journey, and people are starting to feel that. And people then are beginning to be curious and beginning to start to say, wait, my story matters. I know my health better than my doctor does. Why aren't they asking me these questions? Why am I not given a voice in that consult room? And so you're seeing functional medicine has been pushing that status quo for quite some time, but now it's just ever more present, and the masses are feeling it and needing it.
100%. Well, and to quote the great philosopher Jimmy Buffett, some people treat their body like a temple and some people treat their body like a tent, right? So I'm with you there. So let's, Kirsten,
the temple zone. Can I add just one really quick thing before we move on?
Yes, you can add whatever you want.
Sometimes she says things. We work together really closely, and sometimes she says things and it hits a place in my brain and reminds me of something.
Go.
Just when we think about, Kirsten talked about chronic disease earlier in our chat, and when we think about disease and wellness on a continuum, I think that's actually a really helpful part of the functional medicine model, because it allows us to say, here's this continuum, and on this far side is disease, and on this other side is your optimal wellness. At any given moment, you could be anywhere on that spectrum, right? Some days we're more well than others, but I think that gives us an opportunity to reframe when folks get really attached to a diagnosis or to a disease, and that becomes their identity, right? Because we could say, you're not we could push you anywhere on this spectrum. On any day, we could change all of these factors that are going to push you more towards the side of the wellness. So you don't have to identify with the portion of that spectrum that's the disease, because it's all dynamic. It can change at any time. And I think that's a really helpful when we're heading into, in light of our health outcomes with COVID, for example, right? We can tell people, yes, do you have some risk factors that might make you more vulnerable? Certainly.
Right.
But do we have all of these skills and tools to help push you towards that well side of the spectrum? We certainly do.
Right. I love it. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad that triggered a button. Good job, Kirsten. High five to you. Virtual high five. Good job. I love it.
There we go.
So, Kirsten, I'm going to throw this question to you to start with. Let's talk about the role food plays in this process, right? Because I think we got to come to, we're talking about, I'd like to come full circle because, I think that's a really important part. As I said earlier, and I say it all the time, food is medicine. So talk to me a little bit about how food plays a role in the process.
Yeah, no, food is medicine, and to the same effect that I think you bring up often, food can be harmful, food can be poisonous. And we know, I think, more kind of inspiring or insightful, it gets me excited is knowing that food is actually information for our body. And I think that educational piece really captures some audiences. Like once we start to learn the biochemical processes of digestion and vitamins and minerals and how how these foods impact to the core, even our mitochondrial health, I think teaching some of this like biochemistry gets really exciting for people. And then they start to really say, oh gosh, yeah, every time I'm eating, and that could be 3, 4, 5 times a day, I'm doing something really cool to my body. And I think we should have more of those conversations. That's what I'm really excited about.
I love that. I love that. Kalea,
we know that food, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, we know that food is a really, it is to its core a foundational pillar. And if we don't ignore food, we lose a lot of leverage in future therapeutic work. So it is incredibly important.
Absolutely. Well said. Kalea, over to you for the same question. How's food play a role in the process?
Yeah, so I'll just echo what Kirsten said. The food is information. I think you think about that all the time, and it's information on a cellular level, as Kirsten said, and it informs our biochemistry. The other part that I think about, and I'll hate to selfishly center this on my own life, but I have a largely fertility practice, right? And so, so many of my patients are struggling with subfertility or infertility. And so we're always thinking about the contributors to that situation. And food, it relates in a lot of ways, not information just to ourselves, but also information to our nervous system. If we think about the fact that our brain is constantly taking in information, what's going on with our light and dark cues, and what's going on with my food availability, both caloric density, but also phytonutrients, right? And that's telling my nervous system about, in the literature, they call it predation risk. Like, how likely am I to be eaten by a dinosaur right now? And of course, our body is going to heal. And in my practice, I talk about our body's going to reproduce, but healing is totally applicable here too, when our system feels safe. And so I think food is such a powerful intervention, not only because of the cellular changes, but also how it cultivates this sense of safety in your body to heal, because it has an adequacy and a fullness that's readily available. And so I think we have an obligation as healthcare professionals at this point to teach not only about, healthy foods for your immune support, but just about nutrition in general, and how that is an absolutely non-negotiable part of being healthy and resilient.
Absolutely. Well, like I said earlier, you're not going to drink a Diet Coke and eat a bag of French fries and think it's going to cancel out, right? It doesn't work that way. I want to get a little bit deeper, and Kalea, I'm going to throw this question to you to start with. The ways that we can benefit putting these into our lifestyle. And I want to talk, I have 4 different kind of areas I want to just touch on. I'm going to throw them all out at once, and where we go. I don't really care. But, the benefits of incorporating functional food and functional medicine in the 4 areas right now, one of which is women, children, men, and I think one that we don't put a lot of energy in, and something that is the elderly. And I was in a conversation where I found it very, very shocking and I guess maybe not surprising, but more, I was a little bit, it kind of bummed me out, quite frankly, at the decline of healthy fruits and vegetables in the elderly's diet as they continue to age, especially if they get on to assistance or some of these other things that happen. That's a rapid decline. And of all the times, that's not the time to decline eating your fruits and vegetables, right? I mean, we're just compounding. And so if you wouldn't mind touching, and again, women, children, men, and the elderly, I don't care which one you touch. I don't care if you touch all, however, which direction you want to go, but I just think it's really kind of cool to bring this kind of full circle in our conversation.
This episode of Todd-versations is brought to you by Superior Fresh, changing how food is grown to change the world. Proud recipient of the American Heart Association's Heart Check seal for their USA-grown Atlantic salmon, raised on an organic, non-GMO diet in an ecosystem that supports the growing of the sweetest USDA-certified organic lettuces, salads, and vegetables. Visit and shop online at superiorfresh.com.
So Kalea, I'll fire it off to you.
Yep, I'll kick it off. So
Kirsten, you're next. Be ready.
Get ready, Kirsten. My clinical experience largely focuses on women, so I'll touch there a little bit, and then as a mom, I could talk about kids, men, and the aging process is certainly important as well. So if I get sidetracked, bring me back, and I'll make sure I talk about men and the aging process. So with women, functional medicine and functional food is so important, and I talk about nutrition all the time. I think that is an absolutely crucial component of our preconception planning. So most of my patients come to me before they are wanting to get pregnant, and they want to know what to do for nutrition, because really when we are wanting to get pregnant or we're in our reproductive years, it's all about kind of bolstering our reserves and increasing our fortitude. And so I always want to really emphasize nutrient density. I had a teacher of mine when I was in medical school. She was a midwife, and she said, we really want to start from a place of fullness because we want to have so much abundance that we have overflow to give to another person, which makes total sense, right? When we're thinking about growing an entire human from scratch. And so when it comes to women in particularly, I really just want to focus on nutrient density. And that means, a broad spectrum. We kind of simplify it, which I think is helpful, and say, eat the rainbow, right? We talk about that all the time. And while it sounds so simple, that's the way that we can ensure the broadest coverage with phytonutrient and antioxidant protection. Because as we know, I'm even willing to say that functionally, these foods that have different color profiles are going to contain different nutrients, and that's all going to be helpful to support different body systems, right? So one that I talk about all of the time is the anthocyanins, and in our purple foods, and how those are really supporting the integrity of our blood vessels. And so for my women who are thinking about getting pregnant, knowing that our blood volume is going to increase by 50% during pregnancy, which just makes my mind explode, we have to ensure the integrity of our vascular system. And absolutely. So I kind of keep it simple with the women in my practice. For the most part, of course, we can always tailor it to their own metabolic goals, thinking about things like insulin resistance, which is huge in terms of our viral vulnerabilities, right? So we can talk about that later, but just making sure our blood glucose regulation is helpful, that our inflammation is well controlled. These things are all areas that we can approach with food. So that's my big overview of women.
Love it.
And with children, this is interesting. Kirsten and I talked a little bit about this, that of course, nutrient density is ultra important for children as well, as they're rapidly undergoing the growth and maturation process, and all of our tissues and our bones, of course, need adequate nutrition. But I think with kids, this is like where we can really dive into their little food philosophies, right? Because they're always collecting information about where their food is coming from, and their minds are so accepting of new information. And I'll just share, I have two kids. I have a 4 and a 7-year-old, and we are very blessed to live in a farming community. And we moved here about a year ago, and, I have a nutrition degree. And so I've always been really transparent about food, and we've always eaten very healthfully. But there is a shift now where my children see my husband, their dad, working on the farm and working with the animals. And he's out there with a herd of cattle, and he knows their personalities, and he's like part of the herd and knows all of their little herd family intricacies. And when you see that now the farmer is so connected to the farm, is so connected to the food, and that's all, linked in your brain, now you're not separating the food from the farm. It's all one thing. And so I think that I don't know the answer to this, but if there's somehow that we can expose children earlier and more to these food systems, wow, that's how we're going to support our planetary health into the future. I know this is like such a huger conversation, but when we have a new generation that values the farm and the farmer, like, wow, what is that going to mean for our food system going forward?
100% agree with you. That's very, very well said. I mean, and to quote the great Kathleen Merrigan, know your food, know your farmer, right? It's so important. And we have to buy into that. We need to take that time, whether you're talking about labor standards on the farm, fair trade issues, whatever they get, organic, all these different things that are out there. I mean, it's all a part of those things that we need to empower ourselves with to make ourselves not only personally better, but ultimately our planet better, right? Because we're going down a slippery slope with all these people that are coming and all the people that are here and everything else. It's really, really dangerous. Kirsten, I'm gonna throw it over to you, get you stirred up a little bit. How about the same, throw it back to you? If you got more to add, think about it.
I'll talk a little bit.
I'd like to hear a little bit more. Go ahead, Kirsten.
Awesome. I'll talk a little bit about the aging process in elderly, because I do think that it clearly relates to one of the principles I brought up earlier in the conversation about promoting healthy organ reserve, and that's a huge contributor to a decline to age over time. Your organ reserve is your body's ability to kind of support whole body health, to be able to kind of stay resilient and take on whatever insults or that come your way. And with aging, that's what declines, and that's why a small little infection leads to more tragedy, or a small little, right, you break your bone and you don't heal from that. So really supporting your organ reserve over time and starting young. So not thinking about aging elderly once you've hit that time in your life, but starting early, just to Kalea's point too, with her fertility patients, thinking like, how can we create abundance early on in respect to that kind of idea of health as a journey. I think starting and thinking about aging and what we're going to be like and supporting our organ reserve early on in the process through that nutrient density, through looking at all of these root cause imbalances that play, and supporting our health and adhering to this functional medicine philosophy as early as we can will undoubtedly help.
Oh, I know, and I guarantee you, and I'm not going to go on a big limb here, but I bet you I'm going to go on a limb with our audience on a global scale. I guarantee you over 90% of them have never even thought about the expression organ reserve. They've never even come up. It's not even something, it's certainly not on a t-shirt. It should be, but I mean, it's a really valid subject that you bring up. And it's back to our original point, what we talked about all along, making those decisions today and leaving that lifestyle today that's going to make for a better tomorrow, right? It's not the easy button. You're going to have to invest to get to this point of being better off. Doesn't mean you're not going to get hit by a car or get struck by lightning, right? You're not going to prevent that. But there's a lot of things that you don't know that's going to happen that you could work to prevent, right? I mean, you're 75 years old and you don't have prostate cancer. Is that because you got lucky, or is it because you spent 40 years with supplemental doing the right things in your diet, whatever it takes to get you to that point? I'd rather be at that point looking back saying, hey, I don't have it, than rolling the dice going, I wonder if I'm going to get it. It just seems stupid because it's really not hard. What we're talking about, truthfully, is not hard, right? It just becomes this commitment. It becomes this investment of your time and energy into your own life, into the world around you, and what you're doing to contribute to it, but not only contributing to your own body. Anything else to you, either one of you? Because I asked a really broad question. I want to make sure y'all have enough time, and I'm fine with it. You're good, but is there anything else you want to throw at that, in regards to where we were at, please?
I'll add one piece just that I'm thinking about. It's interesting that we pay for insurance for like some traumatic thing that could maybe happen, but we don't invest the same energy into this insurance policy for our aging process, which we know is going to happen,
which is coming,
our health foundations. And that's just an interesting mindset that I hadn't really thought about before, but it kind of speaks a little bit to what we value, like in real time. So just throwing that out there. It's interesting to think about. The next thing, since we're talking about aging, is I take 100% of the opportunities that are presented to me to talk about mitochondria. Kirsten mentioned mitochondria a little bit already, but I just have to put a plug in for mitochondria. I think are our most underappreciated tiny organelle. And so, for anybody who's listening and is like, needs a refresher, you listen back your 10th grade biology teacher, you'll hear them say the mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell. So remember, our mitochondria are producing all of this energy that's powering what I call energetically expensive processes, right? Moving our muscles, using our brain, doing anything. And we know that as we age, our mitochondrial function really starts to decline. And yes, there's so many fancy supplements, CoQ10 and alpha lipoic acid, all of these things that can support mitochondrial function, but also eating your vegetables, drinking water, following your circadian rhythm, meaning bright light in the morning and then dark night, allowing your body to sink into a deep, deep sleep, focusing on antioxidants, exercise, especially in a little bit of cold, which I'm talking like 60 degrees. In Seattle, that's every day. So that's not hard for us here. It's these lifestyle investments that protect our mitochondrial health, which ultimately prolong our health potential. And I think this is really where we can start to talk about the difference in lifespan versus health span, right? And it's these foundational things that really extend our health span into an older age.
Love it. Kirsten, anything to follow up on that? Or we?
No, the one thing that just got triggered in my mind, one of the IFN educators, I think he's said countless times, whether I'm probably going to misquote him, but something along the lines of focusing on our lifestyle factors, these foundational pillars are the greatest return on investment for our health. And to that same point of like, there is so much we can do that is little to no cost that we just need to start integrating in bite-sized pieces throughout our lives. It will get easy. It'll just become kind of the backdrop of your day-to-day life, and it will support you in a lot of different ways, especially for that aging process that we were just talking about.
Yeah, for sure. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you both for that. That was great. I mean, there's some nuggets in there that I hope people go, oh, rewind, listen again, write that down. So thank you both for that. Now, I want to shift gears. And we're going to talk about COVID a little bit. I want to shift gears. Hopefully we don't get deplatformed. Hopefully we don't get, I don't know what the hell will happen, but we're going to try to keep it as open-minded. And I got to tell you, perfect decisions with imperfect information is a great segue. Thank you very much for that, by the way. Again, going on a t-shirt to lead into this. And the reason I wanted to get into COVID a little bit, and we're not going to go down some dark, dirty trail and all this other stuff. I'm not going to get caught up in disinformation. I'm not going to get caught up in misinformation. I'm not going to get caught up in all of that, because I think everybody in this country is struggling from trying to understand how they really truly should feel and what they really truly should do. And I think that however you want to frame it up, I just don't think anybody's comfortable any longer with trying to figure this out. And this is not something you're going to figure out on your own. It's also all over the board, right? From what you shouldn't take, what you should take, and why you did, it's kind of nuts. But I want to touch on COVID because, and I'll share from my own personal experience in this. I've not had COVID, knock on anything in my studio here that's made of wood, probably just that. But in 2020, before there was any vaccines to even have, I continued my business. And I traveled 75,000 butt miles in an airplane in 2020 and just a small part of 2021. And I spent 70 nights in hotels, unvaccinated, dealing with this disease and this virus with whatever information at the moment made the most sense. And I made a lot of those choices on my own. And one of the choices that I've made for years, and one of the choices I leaned into, and Kirsten, you're well aware of this because you've given me a lot of guidance into this, full disclosure, is that I was on a pretty good supplement regimen from a really solid multi, but again, not off the store shelf, to your point, doing the due diligence. I took my zinc, I've got a really good C, I take vitamin D every day, and I take a bunch of other stuff that I can't pronounce, so I'm not even going to try it and look like an asshole on here, but you guys know what it is. But, and I struggled, in my own mind about not getting vaccinated in a sense, because I thought, okay, I understand the RNA. This makes sense to me. The whole nine yards. My biggest problem was, Kirsten, you talked me through this, was just how bad I felt once I got it. And was real concerned about how bad I ended up actually feeling after the second one, which you're well aware of. I mean, that was a really rough 4 days for me personally, but I didn't quit my regiment. I've continued to travel. I've been in public spaces. I've been to a baseball game, with 45,000 people. I've been to conferences. I've been on airplanes, et cetera. I've had dinner across from everybody. And I firmly believe that a lot of that success of not getting sick, and again, knock on wood, and thank you, has to do with the fact that I put a conscientious effort into empowering my own self to try to find a way to help myself. And so I want to talk about that a little bit. So I frame all that up. Hopefully we're not deplatformed at this point. I don't think we are. You guys haven't said anything, so you're fine. It's just me at this point. But one of the things I want to talk about, and what really led me to getting you guys on here, and not only talk about where we're at, because we're building a kind of a case to this subject, is that first I want to talk about, with you, Kirsten, you have published a paper amongst with other folks. It's been peer reviewed, it's out there, and it's and I'm just going to read the title of it. It's 23 pages long, so I'm not going to read all that, but it's Functional Medicine Approach to COVID-19 Virus Specific Nutraceuticals and Botanical Agents. And I would like for you, if you wouldn't mind, just tell us about what that paper is and what your study was and what you did, because it kind of sums up what I've just spewed onto for a couple of minutes. But please share with us about your work.
Sure, absolutely. So back in March, April 2020, obviously right at the start of this pandemic, we were all kind of just trying to put our feet to the ground and figure out where to go next. And of course, we both work at the Institute for Functional Medicine, and we train and educate practitioners, which of course we also build out patient resources. And we knew that we had to have a little bit of a better grasp about what we can educate our practitioners and patients with. And so we knew that, by nature in the functional medicine approach, we're looking at immune resiliency, and we're trying to cultivate health and to kind of prevent illness and maintain that sort of resiliency throughout our entire lives. And so while we didn't really feel like, we could go into the literature, and quite frankly, there wasn't at the time. There was no COVID-19 SARS-CoV-2 research. We knew mechanistically, a lot of what we teach in functional medicine is all about our body systems and biological plausibility and low risk, high strength of evidence interventions. And so that's where nutraceuticals and botanicals can come into play. And so we evaluated about 12 agents at first, different nutraceuticals and botanicals that could modulate the immune system, that could mitigate any potential further viral replication, looking at other studies on different viruses, because of course we didn't have any on COVID-19, and just gathered the evidence, leveled it, provided strength of evidence recommendations and risk of harm, and compiled several summary tables of different botanicals and nutraceuticals, including, I think we had curcumin, quercetin, vitamin D, resveratrol, all of these supplements and all of these interventions that we teach for different reasons, but we know boost immune resiliency. And so, the other really important piece of this research, we looked at the mechanisms of action that could potentially be similar to the COVID-19 virus. We also looked at patient-oriented outcome studies. So looking at other viruses and how effective vitamin D was on them, how effective quercetin was on further symptoms and pro-mitigating symptoms. And of course, still taking that leap and saying, we know these aren't necessarily directly influencing COVID-19, but gosh darn, they can really help support our immune system. And that's what we need to leverage right now. So
I love it. I love it. It's a cool
really
paper.
Fun.
I actually read it. I'm not going to lie to you. I read it. There's a lot of words, a lot of consonants. I didn't ask those, but I read, the 5 letters or less. I got them all.
Beautiful.
So thank you for that. So here's my question to both. Let's how can we, utilizing functional medicine, the work that you've, the conversation we've already laid out, functional food, the conversation we've already laid out, help our bodies in this pandemic and help us make, just good choices, right? Because again, I would love for, the powers that be to go, hey guys, take vitamin D every day. Go take a vitamin C, right? Put that into your diet, exercise, go take a walk around the block. I know that's a big thing for me. I was sharing with you before we went on the air, if I don't get my 5 miles in every morning, starting at 4:30 in the morning, it's just my day's ruined, right? I'm so addicted to it now. And that's what ends up happening is you start to do more and more, in my opinion, the more and more things you do good to your body, the more and more your body wants more good things. It's just a natural response. So my question is how does functional food and functional medicine help our bodies fight COVID, whether it be studies like your own or reports or, things that are out there? So Kalea, I'm going to throw this to you to start with, but it's a really broad question. There is no really great, I'm not looking for any specific answer. I'm just looking for kind of summation of what we've already talked about, but really applying it to this particular instance.
Sure. So the thing I'd like to point out to start with is I think it's really important that we understand our unique profile of vulnerability. And I know that sounds scary, but I think that this is where it's really important that we're doing our normal health maintenance, because we know that there are some factors that make people more vulnerable to infection or severe infection, right? And that's things like our glucose regulation, like I talked about earlier. So go your annual physical and have your hemoglobin A1C and your fasting insulin measured. Then you kind of know what's going on with your glucose metabolism. Measuring your inflammatory body burden. So I do this with a test that's called high sensitivity C-reactive protein. We measure your inflammatory load, looking at things like nutritional inadequacies, right? And this is a nuanced conversation because we have so much of what we call overfed and undernourished, right? So if we're just doing our general screening and we see someone's clearly getting caloric density, then we're not looking any further at their actual nutrition adequacy, but those inadequacies put us at risk for severe infection. And then thinking about things like our mitochondrial function that I just talked about. So we know that mitochondrial dysfunction is also something that seems to make us more vulnerable to severe disease. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is doing our regular health maintenance that's important anyway, taking care of our metabolic health, getting that lipid panel, getting your hemoglobin A1C, all of that is still really vitally important in this scenario, because that then allows us to add some specificity with how we're going to treat or how we're going to prevent a viral infection, right? If I see someone is very inflamed, I know that I need to work on that inflammatory response right away. And that is going to be what we're going to prioritize. But if someone has, their inflammation is looking good, but we look at their diet and they have no plant-based antioxidants and very little omega-3s, and we know that that type of thing is going to really set you up for an immune response that's not as protective, well, great, then that's where we focus. And so I think functional foods and supplements, those are all really important, but first we have to determine what's even appropriate for that individual. And we do that with screening lab work and a careful history taking and a nutrition-oriented physical exam. Right. And so I think that's where functional medicine really shines, is it gives the practitioner the tools to identify those things so that we can give a tailored treatment plan that's not 50 supplements that maybe you need or maybe you don't.
Right. Kirsten, over to you too with that big, broad kind of broad question.
No, I think what we really, need to start doing right now, and not just kind of in the moment, to my point that health is a journey, the past 18 months or however long it's been, I can't even count anymore. I think this is the 497th day of March 2020. That's what today is. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. But I think this is a pivoting point. It's a turning point to say, let's not be reactive anymore. Let's be proactive. Let's prioritize our health. There are a lot of things we can kind of add to our regime quickly. We could add that superfood smoothie in the morning. We can do all these things right now, but really, we need to take this as a turning point and say, hey, we can do better. And how can we create a better world where public health isn't this thing that just pops up every, decade, where it's like this alarming fire alarm. It's something that we instill into our values, into our systems, into our day-to-day. We start from the ground up. We teach kids, to Kalea's point, that, where our food comes from, we need to think more expansively. I also think that another thing I just want to point out, in terms of supporting our bodies during this time, really also not overthinking this. There is an element to added stress that reason why I like to say bite-sized strategies to help is because I really do think I don't want people to come to me and say, gosh, what is the perfect plan? I'm starting tomorrow. because inevitably that will fail. They'll do a few days of it. It gets too stressful. That added stress actually worsens their immune system. And here we go, starting at ground zero again. We
Right.
need to start slow, be intentional, be proactive, and be okay with just kind of these daily steps, these daily strategies. And to your point about how much you were able to travel successfully and you have this new supplement regime, I think that you already started from a place of abundance. You already had a lot of these principles instilled in you, and that was definitely something that supported you during that time. And I think it's time for a lot of people to start that process.
Well, yeah, I agree. And I think that we need to look, influenza is never going to go away. And I don't believe that COVID's ever going to go away. It's just going to change. It's just going to be like influenza, eventually, right? Yes, it's deadly. It's all the bad. I'm not taking anything away from the bad stuff, right? But it's here to stay. And if we're just going to take on the time to wait for the next, whatever miracle thing, that easy button, I just don't think that's in our best interest. And so doing what you guys do every day and leaning into our bodies and leaning into the science, because that's what we're really talking about. We're talking about the science, right? And the curiosity and that gray area and all those things that you mentioned. It's just super important that we embrace this with when it comes to this pandemic, and that we know we can make a difference. Whether you're looking for herd immunity, whatever these buzzwords, whatever these things everybody's talking about, we can help ourselves and we can empower ourselves. And a question for both of you on this one, is COVID now a part of almost every conversation with your patients in some ways? Like, in the back of your mind, it's out there, and that, hey, you're looking harder at D, you're looking harder at C, you're looking harder at certain, in zinc, obviously, and some of these things. Is it something that you're putting more into your daily regimen now with your patients? Either one of you, go. Pick one. Rock, paper, scissors.
I think it's unavoidable. We're all thinking about it. It's at the forefront of our mind, and it even creeps into any of the conversations I have, even in my fertility patients. It's, well, how can I protect myself so that I can work on these goals and I am protected into the future? And so,
absolutely.
I think it's ubiquitous, and it's so much part of our culture at this point that it's kind of standard. We're going to talk about it always.
Right.
Yeah.
Kirsten, same with you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if it's not them coming in worried about an exposure or dealing with, maybe some long hauler kind of symptoms that are present, it's the social bit, it's the community piece. It's this, like, everyone's just still on the edge of their seat, wondering what's next and stressed.
Right.
And I see that kind of infiltrate all of the conversations that I'm having with friends, family, patients that I was seeing. That is here to stay, unfortunately, at least for now. And I think that's what functional medicine brings to the table is, when you create these partnerships with your patients, having that vulnerability in the conversations that you're having with patients, talking about social connections, realizing the value there. We know, like, loneliness itself, social disconnection is an inflammatory. It has inflammatory components to it. We need community. Yeah. We thrive on it. And so I just wanted to throw that one in there. That It's not always about the virus. It's about, what it's created, the environment it's created.
Well, I think that goes back to some of what we said earlier about just taking that one pill to solve every problem. And it's just not that simple. And I think we have to recognize that science is, I'm a big believer in science. I'm a big believer that what it brings to us is, good findings, bad, but whatever it is. Science is a good thing. And I think that if anything, I hope that this pandemic is an opportunity for people to just take a step back from that stress and that strain of, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but reflect on what happened yesterday and what didn't you do from a personal health standpoint, from a food standpoint, from an environmental standpoint, from all of that, to make a change in your life that ultimately is going to lead you down a better path. It's all, again, I don't beat my own drum, but, I firmly believe that, I was extremely exposed in my travels. There's just no way I wasn't. There's just no way. I was in every major airport in America. I was on a lot of airplanes around a lot of people that were coughing under their mask, right? Whatever. But I really believe that it was some of those choices that I made, that preventative choice, that helped me through that and continues to help me through today. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this. And one of the reasons why I asked both of you to come on and hang out with me, because you're both brilliant. There's no two ways about that. And again, this thing doesn't work out. We got the K2 pop band thing. So we're going back to that opening statement. But, I just think it's so important to hear from, I love the young people in this country, because you all are so much smarter than we were back then. And you guys have such a different view of the world, and you have such a caring heart because you've seen the struggles and trials through your own life. And to be able to come to a point in your life and your career where you're saying, hey guys, this, what we've talked about today, I swear to God, if anybody thinks this is hard, they're nuts. This is not hard. This is just a commitment. Right. And so I just thank both of you from the bottom of my heart for what you do every day, because you probably don't get a lot of thank yous. And I hope that this global audience, which is now, over a whole lot of countries now, which is pretty cool, gets on the website to the Wellness Dish and Functional Fertility and does some typing and say, hey, I loved what you had to say. Tell me a little bit more, because I want to make positive changes, because we need to do that, right? We want to have herd immunity. Let's get a herd immunity around vitamins and minerals. Let's get a herd immunity around eating good food, because it changes everything. Good food changes our climate. Right? All these things they all connect together, right? We're all humans. To your point, Kirsten, about community and being together, we all connect together. And I think it's just so important that this message get heard. And so thank you from the bottom of my heart for being so open. You're not done. Don't get out of here. You guys aren't out of here yet. You're in the hot seat still. We got more crap to talk about, but nonetheless, I just think this is a great spot. Is there anything else, we can go deep, keep talking about COVID. I don't really want to. I think, I think I got out of it what I was trying to accomplish, was just like, look, empower yourself, go to, you got plan A, put plan B into work too, or vice versa, however you want to call it. Is there anything else we didn't touch on in relation to COVID that you wanted to say? I just want to make sure that for this time, we've got that on the table.
No, I think it was broad and expansive, that's what I was hoping for.
Yeah, exactly. So. Me too. Because we don't want to get deplatformed. I'll get deplatformed for something worse than talking about this, I hope. So hey, let's switch gears a little bit. Let's have a little bit of fun. We've been pretty intense now for a while. We've got so we do a thing here at the end of our broadcast called TLC Trivia. And you guys are playing for huge cash and prizes right now. Yeah. Did you know you're playing for cash and prizes, Kalea?
I'm very excited.
Well, you're not playing for shit, so don't worry about it. I'm lying about the whole first part. You're not playing for nothing. It's literally just pride right now.
Pride. That means a lot to me. So
I love it. So here's our first trivia question. What is the rarest color in a bag of M&Ms? Ooh, tough question to ask.
It's been a while since I've eaten M&Ms. I have to be honest.
Me too. I just find trivia questions. I just like this one. I thought this will stump everybody.
I'm going to go yellow.
Okay.
I'm going to go brown.
Brown is the winner. Only 13.5% brown in a bag of M&Ms. There you go, folks. Go to a bar.
Love it.
I guarantee you go to a bar.
I'm coming for my prize.
That's exactly right. You go to a bar, you fill that out, you're going to get a free beer. Okay, here's another one. On a scale of 1 to 10, how strict were your parents? Kirsten first.
I'll say 6.
Kalea.
2.
Oh, good God. Wow. That's all right. I was going to say, give me some examples.
Okay. I really turned out fine, you guys.
I think you did. I think you're okay. All right. Let me ask this one. Kalea, I'm going to throw this one to you first. When you're having a bad day, what do you do to make yourself feel better?
Oh, I have so many options. I snuggle piglets. Ride Peloton.
That's not the answer I thought.
I make a green juice. And I play princess games with my kids. All of that will turn it around instantly.
You had me on piglets, so I gotta be honest with you. I'm good. Kirsten, over to you.
I love that. I'm a huge coffee fanatic. We have a nice little Breville and Violetti and all these things. So I love just, if I'm in a bad mood in the morning, coffee, that it cures. I also just love, I found recently I'm just going on long walks. Like if I need a break in the middle of the day, take my lunch, let's go on a walk. Listen to your podcast, Great.
Damn right you do. We love you for that.
Great opportunity for that.
I love it. All right, Kalea, over here. Next question. Who would you like to have dinner with, dead or alive?
Oh my gosh, I should have been prepared. This is like such a good icebreaker question. Okay, so this is just going to go back to me as a human, that the doctor who encouraged me to become a naturopathic doctor. I was seeing her. She was an Ayurvedic naturopathic practitioner. She really encouraged me to explore naturopathic medical school. And she's the reason why I'm a doctor. She passed away the final year that I was in school, and I never got to tell her like what said to me in a visit 6 years ago. It really changed the trajectory of my life. So I would choose her. I would have dinner with her and just show her how much that impacted. And like, look at me now, doc, it worked out.
Wow. That's a cool one. Kirsten, who'd you have dinner with, dead or alive?
Gosh. There's so many that are kind of bubbling up to the surface, but one that I have just been really inspired by lately, I've just been like jotting down every single one of her quotes, is Dr. Brene Brown. She's a professor, PhD researcher on compassion, empathy, vulnerability, all these things that I think we're all feeling these days. And it just speaks so clearly, so much at home to me that I would just love to pick her brain.
All right. Well, we're going to get her on the broadcast. We'll just do it. We'll get her on the broadcast, and we'll just do a 3. We'll just have a round. Well, all 4 done. We'll reach out. We'll try it. What the hell? I'm not afraid. We'll try it. Let's get her on.
Why not?
Okay. Final trivia question. Climb Mount Everest or jump out of an airplane?
Oh, immediately. No.
And by the way, you do have a parachute. So this isn't a bounce at the end thing. You do get a parachute.
I mean, I've seen enough documentaries that I'm going to jump out of the airplane, but I'm going to be so unhappy about it.
Good answer.
Not a thrill.
That was a little bit of a waffle, but still a good answer.
Yeah.
I was going to choose jumping out of an airplane too, partly because I really want to skydive. Like that's one of my top dreams. I bungee jumped before, and it was just like the most powerful experience. And climbing Mount Everest, you don't always summit. It's a lot of, you have to be comfortable with defeat and not pushing yourself too hard. And I'd like to complete it. I'd like to jump out of an airplane, land on the ground kind of thing. So. Well,
in all fairness now, but not every parachute opens either. So there is still a little bit of inherent risk at the backside. I'm just saying. I'm not trying to be Captain Obvious, but I'm just saying, there is that bounce factor with jumping out of a plane. Tell you what, I'll jump out of a plane with you. I'll do it. I'll step up. I'll jump out of a plane with you.
Love it.
I'm in.
Not many people would.
I'm terrified to death to do it, but I'll do it. I'll do it. But I guarantee you, if we land and everything works out, we're going to need an Uber to get us home. I'm just all I'm saying right there, because we will celebrate. Right? We'll have a milestone moment. Ladies, I got to tell you, K squared, my favorite pot pan. I mean, you guys.
K squared it is.
You guys have absolutely crushed it. You have been so open and so honest, and so inspiring to me. I mean, you guys have touched my heart big time about this conversation, because I believe so strongly in trying to help people and so strongly trying to uplift people. And while I know your work is big, and I know your work, it takes a lot to get where you are in this world, in your careers, this isn't that hard for people to lean into. We're not asking people to go, build a building out of toothpicks. We're asking them to just take a moment to pause and understand the choices that they can make every day that can empower them. So I have one final question I want to throw at you guys. The world changes, our food supply is changing. Foods can hurt us, foods can help us. We've touched on that. Viruses and diseases are always going to be here. They're going to progress, they're going to evolve. And I hope truly in my heart, I hope people really truly take the time to digest this message, and get on your website, get on Functional Fertility, get on the Wellness Dish, inquire, ask questions, reach out. I always say there's no dumb question, right? There's just not. So I have my final question to you, and whichever one of you wants to grab it first, I don't really care. What's one piece of advice you would give someone wanting to empower themselves to make a change in their life?
I'll jump in. I would just keep it simple and say, just get started. Be curious and own your own story.
Love it. Kalea?
So this advice, it sounds cheesy, and I just want to come out. I want to acknowledge that it sounds cheesy, so that I know. What I tell people, is that you're worthy of this, right? Because when we start to do all the lifestyle changes, Todd, you've mentioned it's not hard, but it's an investment of your time and your energy. And to do that hard work, you have to you have to be able to anchor that into something. When we talk about motivational interviewing, it's like, well, why is it worth it? Why do you care? Why do you want to make these changes? And I think at the end of the day, if you are worth something to yourself and you know that you are worthy of that investment, you're going to do it.
Mhm.
Drop the Sharpie, kids. I can't top that. I can't top you two. Let's go make perfect decisions with perfect information and see what it does for our world, right? Ladies, from the bottom of my heart, I mean this. I mean, you have touched me deeply with this conversation. I mean, it really has. Thank you. Thank you for being here. We got to do better for our country. We got to do better for our planet. And you guys are a part of that. So thanks. Come back. Please come back. I want to do this more with you guys. Let's get you over on our other broadcast, Todd Bits. We'll do a short version. We'll just tackle some topics. Let's do it because this is so important. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen,
thank you.
Dr. Kalea Wattles, Kirsten Ramsdell, go to their websites, check it out, empower yourselves, people. I tell you all the time, it's the most important thing we can do is inspire people and empower people. Thank you for watching. Thanks for being part of the Todd-versations. We'll see you all soon. Take care.